Welcome to Backyard Cigars. And what you see here is an aged, slightly aged Opus X, Arturo Fuente Opus X Robusto. And it's in the cellophane. It's been in the humidor for 2 years, 2.5, almost. And it measures at 5 1/4 by a 50 ring gauge, Dominican Puro. And I have aged it in its cellophane. Now I've also had it without cellophane, so if there are any differences whatsoever, I'll obviously point those out. We've talked about aging. How long should you age it? Should I age it with the cellophane? It really depends on the situation. That's as much as I can say. I mean, I would obviously recommend to everyone to do a little research and see what's the best fit for them. But for me, if I'm storing them in zip bags, I prefer to keep the cellophane on just for extra protection and to capture a little extra humidity in the cigar. If I have them in my prized humidor, I like to see them naked and out of the cellophane. But in this case, this baby remained in the cellophane just to see what, if any, difference there would be smoking them straight out of the cellophane after 2.5 years of aging. So let me just see. I was already kind of messing around with it. There's very little yellowing on this cellophane. Enough time hasn't passed. How long should you age these, with or without cellophane? It's sort of like what a lot of brewers say to people that age beer, like myself. And I'm pretty good at aging beer, but beer does not equate to a cigar. But most brewers will tell you, age a beer 3 years. A lot of cigar manufacturers or cigar companies will tell you, age your cigar 3 years to 5. And if you seen my previous video, which I smoked a Cuban yesterday, you'll notice that I mentioned how some people like to age them for 8 to 10 years. And that's more preference. If that's what you want to do, you can do that. If you know what you're doing, it really helps, because you'll know that certain flavors might be diminished. And if you're looking for a smooth, easygoing cigar, you can get that in aging a cigar for a long, extended period of time. Also depends on what cigar you're aging, right? Just like it depends on what beer you're aging. No more analogies with beer. This is all about the cigars. You see the cigar, Opus X Robusto. I'm going to clip this like this. I'll be right back. Okay, so while we're waiting for these flavors to develop, I took the opportunity to smoke one of my rarer cigars, one of the cigars that I may have more than one, but are deemed special for special occasions. And I consider today a special day because it's December and it's damn near 60 degrees. It's a little chilly because I don't have that humidity in the air that I had on the day that I smoked the Cuban from the Churchill Cuban. So I don't have 79 humidity. I don't have that, and I also have a lot of wind. It's very windy today. So there are some differences in the 2 days. If you're seeing this, then you've already seen the review on the Cuban, the cigar that couldn't be kept down. So that day it was 55 to 57, 78, 79 humidity, and not very windy at all. Today, little more wind. It's closer to 60, but the humidity is more at a normal level. We're talking maybe 50s. So special because it is the holiday season, and with the crazy year that we've had, you've got to treat yourself just a little bit. If you can, just just a little bit. And I said, there aren't many days in December that you can say we reached near 60 degrees, so I've got to smoke a cigar, that's for sure. But which cigar? Regular cigar? Good regular cigar? Shorty cigar? The list goes on. But I decided that it would be a good opportunity to smoke one of these babies. I've had Arturo Fuente cigars in the past. Many of us have. I mean, like Padron, you've got their cheaper cigars that are available that are excellent as well. And then in other lines of cigars, you have some tobacco from the Chateau de la Fuente used. The Ashton ESG is a perfect example. Where the wrapper comes from Chateau de la Fuente and is used in these cigars. So if you've experienced certain cigars, you may have had some Fuente tobacco, and we can all agree that it's really good, right? I think so. I was reading something on the internet. I think his name is Stogie Joe or something like that. I think he has a website online, and he did an article several years ago on what makes a cigar special, or what is a special cigar. And he kind of broke it down, and he did a lot of research, and he smoked different things in order to really see the differences between, say, Padron 2000 and Padron 80th year. And he listed several examples, and I thought it was pretty cool how he formulated everything and put it together. So my response to that is absolutely, he was correct in his assessment and his analysis of what deems a cigar special. We've already touched on celebratory cigars, and that's slightly different, although it kind of combines the two, because you want a special cigar for a celebratory cigar, but not always. And then you have special occasions, which fall into the celebratory range as well. But special cigars, meaning that they're intended to be special because the cigar company behind them is telling you that they're special, that they're limited. The price tag is shouting at you that it's limited and hard to find, is just another clue that the cigar is not just deemed special by the people who make it, but by those of us who seek it. So I'm going to smoke a little more. I'll come right back. Ultimately, what you think, or what we think, makes a cigar special isn't always what cigar makers consider the qualities that make a cigar special. So most of the time, I think that it's extra fermentation time, aged tobacco, perhaps a special rolling process, or a special selection of rollers for the intended job, and everything else that goes into it, whether it be binder, wrapper, and in this case, it's all three: wrapper, binder, and filler, that make the cigar special. This comes from the people who make it, because they know the work that they put into it, and they know how much effort and time it takes to craft a piece of art like an Opus X. We, the public, read that, hear that, and whether we believe it or not is not the question. It's when we get our hands on one, if we do, and smoke it and tell the story of how good it is or how good it wasn't, for some people. And that leaves a history of how well it was received. Sales don't lie, obviously, but you can sell a lot of white girl rosé, doesn't make it good, right? So when it comes right down to it, for me, when I read the finer points of what Arturo Fuente, Carlito Fuente Jr. is doing in order to make these cigars special, that's what grabs my attention. Very much the same way with Padron or with any cigar that is aging their tobacco and just being completely, meticulous in every aspect. So those things into consideration, and they will call attention to what meets the standards for a special cigar. To the cigar, I was getting a light spice at the very beginning of the cigar. And just as I was speaking, the last puff that I took, I got a little bit of sweetness and vanilla. Really, really nice. Construction. That's another thing I look at in a special cigar. This wrapper is flawless. Let me show you. I mean, yeah, the band's beautiful and everything, which we've all known that these special type cigars are always going to have these opulent bands, and I think that's the right word if you ask Arturo Fuente, Carlito Fuente. Very nice. Let's see it. It's just a really nice cigar to hold in the hand. It has a good feel to it. This cigar has been something that a lot of people did not expect it would be. It took nearly 7 years to develop, give or take. In the late 80s, what I'm about to say right now, I take no credit for. It wasn't even research, really. I didn't consider it research. It was just almost common knowledge and so easy to find online that most of you have already read it and probably know the story. Carlito Fuente Jr. was doing what he did. He was assembling tobacco like every other tobacco man and doing what he loved to do. But he met a guy in France that told him, "You're not really a cigar guy. You're just kind of like, you get cigar stuff together, but you're not really doing the real deal until you can make a cigar 100% from the Dominican Republic." Carlito goes on to tell his own story and say that it stuck with him and that it became a personal challenge to himself to be the first guy, the first person to produce a Dominican puro. I've talked about puro pride. I've talked about how important it is to certain tobacco producing countries, nations, for them to be able to say, we can grow tobacco for wrapper, binder, and filler and produce a fine cigar completely from the area. So whether it be a Nicaraguan puro or a Costa Rican puro or a Colombian puro for that matter, there is a sense of pride in being able to say you don't need to go elsewhere to get what you need to, make the cigar. And that's something that stuck with Carlito Fuente Jr. He wanted to make a Dominican puro. He wanted to be first. And in 1994, when these cigars first came out, 94, 95, people didn't know what to expect. You weren't supposed to be able to put out a Dominican puro. Tobacco in the Dominican Republic wasn't intended for all three. It certainly wasn't intended for wrapper. It might find some for binder and obviously filler, but wrapper was the real thing that was getting in the way of finishing the product, of creating this Dominican puro. And Carlito Fuente, he got some help from the Oliva family, and they showed him an area in Santiago, which is where Chateau de la Fuente now exists, and he made it work. He was experimental. He tried the Piloto Cubano, he tried the Corojo, and he came up with a recipe that finally worked in order to make wrapper, binder, and of course filler. And he hasn't looked back. I mean, he really hasn't. It's just been a progression. It's just gotten better. This is indeed a fine smoke. It really is. It's smooth. It's elegant. It's flavorful, medium-bodied, but full-bodied in flavor, but medium-bodied in strength, and I'm pretty sure it's going to pick up in strength as it goes. It has been picking up in strength, and it'll more than likely convert to a full-bodied cigar smoke across the board. But I'm getting like these little hints of spice and vanilla, sweetness from tobacco sweetness. What impresses me the most is obviously the balance of the cigar, how well balanced it is. It's just the aroma is, oh, forget about it. It's intoxicating. It's just an unbelievable aroma. I've smelled other great smelling cigars, and this falls. It's not that it's head and heels above other great smelling cigars, but the combo effect, right? The great aroma, the great flavor. The burn line's a little, just a tad bit, a little off there. I'm thinking it'll correct itself. It's a little windy out here. I'll cut it some slack. Yeah, good smoke output. The draw is great. And you're smoking vintage tobacco here. You're smoking tobacco that's been aged already. Forget about how long you age it. They've already aged it and given it extra fermentation time. The flavors are amazing. And it's a nice enough day that I can say there isn't the cold weather, the temperature isn't robbing it of any flavors. There's a little, that spice note that sort of stays in the finish, but then up front you get this tobacco sweetness, and those hints of vanilla just ride the wave. Got a little pepper in there somewhere, but I got a note of pepper. Crackle pop of pepper. Not bad. I'm going to smoke a little more. I'll come back. Look, folks, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that you have to spend $20, $30 on a cigar, or that you have to go hunting for a special cigar that costs a lot of money in order to have a great cigar experience or commemorate a special event or feel special. That doesn't need to be the case. But you buy special clothing for a reason, right? You buy that special suit for a reason. And you commemorate events with special things for a reason. And so cigars are no different in that respect. You have special cigars because people want special cigars, first of all, and because there is an artistic side to this, and in the case of the Arturo Fuente Opus X, I mean, the other day, my girlfriend's father, he brings over a wine for us to try, and this was actually Thanksgiving, and I had a 5-person Thanksgiving. Masks must be worn inside, special filters on the filtration, whatever. I'm just letting you know it was very safe. And we're talking, and he's holding the bottle, and he's telling me, yeah, Opus 1 vineyard or wine, and kind of rang a bell. And I said, well, it sounds familiar. Then it hit me. Wait a minute. This is the joint venture wine that Robert Mondavi and Philippe de Rothschild, that Rothschild, came together for, and this was the wine that inspired a lawsuit against Carlito Fuente, claiming that people would confuse the two. In other words, they were saying, no, we named our wine Opus 1, and Carlito Fuentes Jr.'s cigar, Opus X, might create some confusion with the brand. It might affect I don't know what it was going to affect. Obviously, it went through the courts and it was dismissed. The judge ruled in favor of Carlito Fuente Jr. For a moment, the Opus X may not ever have come to light, because what Opus 1 wanted Carlito Fuente Jr. to do, they wanted him to destroy his complete inventory of cigars. Just destroy them. All of that great tobacco, all of that hard work, just destroy it. Because Opus 1, the wine, must be the only thing on earth that has the word opus in it. And it was only opus because Carlito Fuente was looking for a word that was similar to opulent. And that was what he came to, was opus. Been very consistent in flavor so far, and in body it's just picked up a little bit. It's just a very smooth cigar. It's easy sailing. It's just consistently good. Excuse me. So, with everything that he went through to finally produce a Dominican puro, it obviously made the people of the Dominican Republic very proud, because now they could brag about a Dominican puro, a cigar completely made in the Dominican Republic. And that's one of the, bragging rights of Puro Power, as being able to say, we got it all right here. Whatever you need, we can make it all right here. We don't need to outsource. And don't get me wrong, it's a fabulous thing when you get a cigar and you can incorporate Ecuadorian Connecticut shade, Nicaraguan, blended with Honduran, and all of those things are great and make things interesting and exciting for us cigar smokers. But it's also interesting and exciting when we can see what can be done with just what is at hand in that country or that nation. And this is it right here. This is it. I mean, he does make the Eye of the Shark, and he uses a Cameroon wrapper. So it's not always Dominican puros for Arturo Fuente, but it's easier to to produce cigars that way because you have everything at your disposal. You don't have to seek anything anywhere else. Just makes it easier. It wasn't always the same. It was different for Cuba as well. We know now that anything that's an authentic Cuban is going to be a Cuban puro, of course. But when Cuba was in its heyday, you had cigar makers that were blending Cuban tobacco with Puerto Rican tobacco, with Sumatra, with, you heard of the Cuban sandwiches. And it wasn't all just, we're just going to use everything from Cuba. There was a variation of what you could use, and a lot of people used different tobaccos. Later on, of course, with the revolution, a lot of avenues were closed, so that's where we're at right now. But I'd like to see if that could happen one day, if when Cuba opens up in the tobacco sense, and not just so much whether we can start buying them legally, but when you can have companies go in and say, well, I'm going to buy some Cuban tobacco and I'm going to blend it with some Nicaraguan, and put a Mexican San Andres wrapper on it and see what you have. And it'll be just so interesting to have another country's tobacco in the fold as a part of the mainstream, as opposed to just being a puro. So that's just my thought there. Take some time with this, and I'll be right back to sum it all up. Okay, this is a cigar that had an excellent draw from the start. It has had a good burn line, corrected itself once or twice. You got some spice, notes of pepper, sweet earthy tobacco, hints of vanilla. Along the way, I also picked up on a little bit of cedar and woodsy notes. Medium bodied, medium strength in my opinion, but just bursting with intense flavors and just really smooth. And I think the little bit of aging that I gave it, the 2.5 years, just smoothed it out just a little bit more. I remember having it fresh. There was a little more presence of a pepper and spice note that didn't dominate, but certainly was more prominent. And I think that just a little bit of aging just smoothed it out just a little bit. It's been kept in a humidor at 65 to 66 RH. And like I said, today's was closer to 60 earlier, but it's probably 55 degrees right now. Probably a good moment to light a fire, which has already been lit and has been lit throughout this review. Thank you for watching Backyard Cigars. I hope you enjoyed the review on this iconic cigar, this Arturo Fuente Opus X Robusto. Definitely a crowd pleaser and something that's pleasing me right now. So I recommend that if you can get your hands on it, just do it once if you can and enjoy it. Thank you.